Hello, my name is Lisa Miller. I'm a volunteer with the Maine Families Network. And if you're not familiar with the network, we're a group of volunteers that honor and promote families building productive lives for their children. And among the activities we do are doing some videos that we post in several places around issues that we think are important to families. And today we'd like to talk about a family that was challenged and how that family coped with it, because it has, I think, important things to say to us all. And today we have Tim Wade, and he's going to tell us in so many words, as I ask various questions, about what it was like when his 4-year-old son Nathan was diagnosed with cancer. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, where you live.
Hey, thanks, Lisa. My name's Tim Wade. Been married to my wife, Jen, for going on 13 years now. We live in Fairfield with our 2 sons, Connor, age 11 almost, and Nathan will be 7 in January.
So Nathan was 4 when that diagnosis came through. Tell us about that time and what that was like for you.
Yeah, so it would have been late March 2014. My wife called me and was nervous about a bump that had shown itself in the ribcage area of Nathan's chest. When she first gave me the call, I did my typical dad role of trying to downplay the situation and get it all into control, and said that there was nothing to worry about. But her motherly instincts told her differently, and we ended up taking him into the emergency room that evening because when I got home, I saw what had gotten her so nervous. There was a golf ball sized lump sticking out between 2 of his ribs on his right rib cage. So we went through a battery of tests, and several weeks later got a diagnosis of Ewing sarcoma, which is a fairly rare bone cancer found almost entirely in adolescents.
So it's rare for a 4-year-old to get that?
Yeah, it's a bone and soft tissue cancer that normally shows itself on young child athletes, and it's usually in either the arm or the leg from the research that we did after getting the diagnosis. But especially in the location, it was a very rare situation.
So that's a pretty stunning diagnosis for any family. And what was that like for your family? Who did you go talk to? Who did you draw on? Who helped you out when you learned that?
Yeah, that hits you like a punch right to the gut.
Yeah.
Certainly not something you're expecting, even after several weeks to kind of prepare yourself for the worst. You're still hoping for the best and not really preparing for that diagnosis. So, family and friends, we leaned heavily on our own support groups that have been forged throughout the years through different activities. But it was a lot of family and friend time, phone calls, teary-eyed phone calls, hugs, meeting with people, just to try and figure out where we go from here.
Yeah. So I presume you went off to a series of specialists. Was that in Portland or Boston?
No, we did everything in Portland. Thankfully, Maine's got a very good child oncology group that, while we were still uprooted, we were able to stay local enough to kind of carry on life as normal.
And I imagine the treatment was lengthy and a lot of back and forth between Fairfield and Portland. That's a long way to go.
Yeah,
Did you stay down there?
We closed up our house in Fairfield. I tried to get up there through the summer months once a week or so to keep the lawn mowed. But we shut it right down, and come winter we made everything winterized so that we could just walk right away from the house and concentrate on Nathan for that time. and we actually stayed with my in-laws in Brunswick, my wife's parents, and we made the best of the situation that we had.
That was a big upheaval. I mean, you moved even.
Yeah, we had to. There was no way that... so Nathan's course of treatments, he was on a very aggressive chemo regimen that had him getting 2 to 3 treatments a week, which meant that we were staying in the hospital 3 to 4 to sometimes 5 nights a week. And in the early stages of the treatments, he would come home from the hospital and almost immediately after treatment and almost immediately spike a fever, and we'd have to return to the ER right away.
Yeah.
And that was ongoing for the first several months of the treatments.
Wow.
No feasible way to be in Fairfield.
No, there really isn't. And I have seen families who try to commute for those kinds of treatment situations. It's just almost impossible to maintain. So you're fortunate you drew on some family members to live at least halfway down.
Right.
How did your other son cope with all this? How did you help him cope with all this?
He had a tough time at it, and in some ways he is still trying to fight through some of that. He was in 3rd grade at the time. Well, he finished up 2nd grade in Fairfield, and that took from March to June. That took some coordination to get him to and from classes. And my mom lives in Sydney a little more locally, and she was able to help with that quite a bit. But he certainly saw his brother getting a ton of attention, and he wasn't getting all that attention, and that was tough for him, and to some extent something that he's still trying to work through a little bit. So the Patrick Dempsey Center in Lewiston offers free counseling for anybody going through cancer, anybody affected by cancer, and we utilize that service. And he had a great counselor there that he still talks to from time to time to help him through some issues.
Fabulous. So you drew on strong family networks.
Yep.
Of course, healthcare providers are always so helpful, but then counseling services, some wraparound counseling services are really helpful for your son. Did you, as parents, tap counseling at all, or did you make it through okay without it?
We've utilized some of those services ourselves. But I'm personally kind of the old school farm guy from Central Maine that's not really ambitious to go seek out counseling, but it's great to have those services available when they're needed, and they are needed from time to time.
And counseling works when you want it and you're ready for it.
Yep.
And if you've got other systems that work for you, then you use those systems. Clearly family was extraordinarily helpful to you.
Friends and family both, and we've got a large network of friends that stretch from Sugarloaf down through Central Maine to the Brunswick area, and there's no words that can express how much they did for us during that time, whether it was financially, whether it was just to be there to offer a hug or to help with the children or whatever. Along with that, once we were in the hospital, the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital has a dedicated staff called Child Life Specialists, and they're amazing. What they do for the patients there at the hospital and their siblings, and to some extent the parents, is amazing. They keep a situation that is not happy. They put the best spin on it that they can, and really keep the kids engaged and not worried about their health so much.
A lot of arms wrapping around you, huh?
Yeah.
And how do you think it would have been if you didn't reach out and tap your family members and have that support network? Could you have done this alone? Well, first of all, I couldn't have done it without my wife. She was an amazing advocate for Nathan.
She was a stay-at-home mom with some side jobs, but those all went to the side once the diagnosis came in, and she was absolutely integral in his entire medical plan. moving forward, and keeping us all together and moving towards that plan.
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that.
Sure.
I'm lucky that we didn't have that situation where we didn't have family
Yeah.
and friends to rely on.
Yeah.
It certainly would have been extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get through without that.
Yeah. And how's Nathan now?
Nathan, he's excellent. We're actually going in for another quarterly checkup. So 4 times a year, we go in and he has a whole battery of tests done again. One of which includes a pretty intensive MRI, where they have to put him under anesthesia because he's still young, and they do about a 2-hour MRI, which involves controlled breathing. And so they put a breathing tube in and control his breathing so they can get the right imaging. So that's still, something that gets us worked up a little bit coming into that, because you've got the anesthesia, and that's always the first thing that happens when we walk in is they give you this form and say that you realize that this and this
all
could
these
happen.
bad things can happen. Yes.
And after you've seen that form, a couple hundred times now, it's kind of, used to it. It's the same old stuff, but it's still, when you hear someone saying those things to you, and they're talking about your kid, it gets to you a little bit. And then there's the waiting period after the scans. There's usually a day to 2 days turnaround, which isn't a long time, but when you're sitting on pins and needles waiting to know that everything's still clear and not hear any news in the opposite direction, that day and a half to 2 days can seem like an eternity.
And so tell us about how Nathan got through this. Physical challenge, beeping machines everywhere, pain, I'm sure, all these solicitous strangers coming and going. How did he get through this personally?
So Nathan's a little old man. He's he's very wise and mature for his age, and he leaned heavily on spiritual items that I'm not even sure where he learned of some of these things, but the Hindu god or Ganesh, the remover of obstacles,
really?
was huge for him, as well as some of the Catholic angels, Archangel Raphael, Archangel Michael, were both either tokens or little jewels or something that he had with him at his bedside all along, and he would he had full faith in those little trinkets and what they represented. Along with that, my wife had him on kind of an alternative method for some of his medical needs, where she was using aromatherapy and different scents and oils and stuff like that to help him. And so when he would have an upset stomach, instead of hitting the red button and looking for the doctor to have some, he knew exactly. He'd say, "Mommy or Daddy, I need peppermint oil for my belly."
Wow.
And we'd get a little bit of peppermint oil and rub it on his belly, and he would feel better.
And he was good.
Yep.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yep. So what has this sort of permanently changed your family now? Its patterns, its schedules. You're back in Fairfield.
We're back in Fairfield. Yep. That was a great moving day.
Yeah, I bet it was. I mean, so you of course have more medical appointments, etc. But did it change the way you all react to each other or make decisions? Or
we're almost 2 years removed now, so some of the newness or some of the old habits have kind of fallen back into place. But I would say, without a doubt, we certainly hold each other a little bit tighter at night, and just so grateful to still be together as a family, in full strength, because for a while it was really up in the air as to whether that was even, in the cards for the future. And, we just make sure not to take any of that time together for granted.
Yeah. And if you're speaking to another family with a similar challenge, Are there little bits of advice or guidance or anything you would perhaps offer to a family? Some of the structures you leaned on?
Yeah, talk to my wife. She's a lot better at that than I am. You know, I guess a couple things would be, you know, be strong, be there for each other, and be your own medical advocate. You're going to hear a lot of information really fast, and try to write it down. At least, you know, try to write down some of the big points that they're getting to you, and then go back and do some research on it yourself. Because there's a lot to understand, and it's overwhelming. And the only way to really process it, for us anyway, was to take it and kind of get through it on our own schedule, rather than in the 5 minutes that we were talking to the doctors.
Yeah.
Other than that, good luck, and you know, God bless.
Yeah. My husband's a physician, and he often suggests to people that in those extremely stressful appointments where you have 5 minutes with a very busy surgeon, that you bring another person in with you.
Yep.
That's acceptable, and it's another set of ears, another set of eyes, because you are, very stressed, and we don't all listen at our tippy top when we're in that kind of a situation. But at least you had two adults. Well, wait, what did they say? You know, when we walk out, you know, that kind of thing.
Me and my wife were able to go to almost every single appointment together. And a lot of times we would still bring somebody else in with us, just because we were, you know, at that situation where we may not have been able to fully listen and comprehend, and we were kind of, you know, hearing what we wanted to hear. So it was good to have somebody else's neutral ears on it. And the Maine Children's Cancer Program provides you with a resource from their staff that'll take all the notes as well, and provide you with the transcript of the notes, so that you have something to go back and look at.
Yeah. Well, listen, Tim, that was an amazing journey, and you're still on it, but it sounds like the road is golden, perhaps. Still a few bumps in it, but you hung together as a family. You had structures that you leaned on, and friends and family you leaned on, and faith and some spiritual help as well.
Absolutely.
So we have to tap all those things when we're a family in stress. And we're just so happy Tim could come and talk to us about their family's experience. We hope others who have similar issues find their own structures and supports to lean on. And we will cite a few of those organizations that Tim spoke about at the end, and please tap them. And meanwhile, we have other videos. If you want to see them, go to our website, which we'll list at the end. And thank you for joining us. See you next time.